Let's get right into it. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating professional case study that literally sits right at the intersection of deep cultural heritage and cutting-edge engineering. We're looking at one of Tokyo's absolute most iconic sites, Asakusa and the Sensoji Temple. Now, for construction management professionals, this is way more than just a beautiful tourist destination. It's really a masterclass in how you balance preserving centuries of history with the incredibly strict demands of modern safety, seismic resilience, and extreme urban density. So let's dive right into the explainer.
When millions of visitors walk through the Sensoji precinct today, they are struck by the sheer beauty of it all. With the towering five-storied pagoda and the massive, visually striking main hall, the whole place projects this aura of absolute antiquity. It looks like a perfectly preserved ancient temple complex. But as construction professionals, we know that in a highly seismically active zone like Tokyo, maintaining this flawless historical illusion requires some serious, behind-the-scenes engineering.
Which brings us to the million-dollar operational question. How exactly do you maintain a 7th century site using 20th century steel and 21st century titanium? The reality behind that ancient facade is that the site relies heavily on modern materials and structural systems, and that poses a totally unique challenge for a project manager. You're tasked with keeping the spiritual and visual authenticity completely intact, while actually running a highly advanced modern infrastructure project.
To break down this explainer, we'll hit 5 key phases: a living heritage site, centuries of layered urbanism, engineering the main hall, managing life cycle and logistics, and finally, the global manager's checklist.
Okay, Section 1, a living heritage site.
The crucial thing you've got to remember here is that Asakusa is not some static, quiet museum. It is a beautifully chaotic, living ecosystem. Any maintenance or construction work happening here has to account for active religious worship, traditional neighborhood commerce, mass tourism, and modern disaster recovery protocols. And often, you're dealing with all of those simultaneously. You aren't just managing concrete and steel, you're managing a dense environment where just closing a pathway could disrupt an ancient festival or choke off a vital commercial artery.
Moving to Section 2, centuries of layered urbanism.
To really manage logistics here, you have to understand that this site has been adapting forever. We're talking way back to 628 AD, when a Canon image was found in a nearby river, and a local residence was converted into a temple. Fast forward to the Edo period, and it had evolved into this bustling hub, blending worship with urban leisure. Then tragedy strikes. The Great Kanto earthquake of 1923 and the devastating wartime air raids of 1945 pretty much erased the old townscape. So what we're managing today is largely the post-war rebuilding, a district specifically reconstructed to serve as a heritage tourism hub. Every single logistical decision made today is deeply shaped by this layered history.
And there's actually a direct line from that deep past to the logistical bottlenecks we see today. For example, back in 1685, temporary shops were permitted along the approach in exchange for merchants cleaning the temple precinct. Well, today, that historical commercial setup has evolved into Nakamise Street, a super narrow, incredibly dense corridor packed with about 90 permanent stalls. For a modern project manager, that history translates directly into a modern nightmare for delivery coordination, staging, and emergency vehicle access. History is literally dictating your site access plan.
Which brings us to Section 3, engineering the main hall.
So, how do you upgrade a site with such deep historical constraints? This is where the engineering gets absolutely fascinating. The main hall was actually rebuilt in 1958 using post-war reinforced concrete, but by 2009, it needed major repairs, including vital seismic strengthening. The original traditional Japanese clay tiles weighed a massive 930 metric tons. I mean, imagine that enormous top-heavy load during an earthquake. The solution? Engineers replaced them with visually identical modern titanium roofing tiles, plummeting the weight to just 180 metric tons. This staggering weight reduction drastically improved earthquake resistance while perfectly preserving that dramatic, sweeping roofline.
That same illusion of antiquity extends over to the 5-storied pagoda too. It looks like a masterpiece of ancient woodworking, right? Well, it's actually a 1973 reconstruction. Beneath that traditional exterior hides a 48-meter-tall steel frame and reinforced concrete skeleton. But look, just because the bones are modern doesn't mean maintenance is a breeze. Decades later, this structure still requires extensive life cycle asset management. We're talking highly specialized exterior repairs, roofing inspections, and modern LED lighting updates, all while maintaining that flawless heritage appearance.
But wait, it gets even more complicated. Not everything on the site is a post-war reconstruction.
Some structures, like the Naitamon Gate and the Asakusa Shrine, miraculously survived the destruction of 1923 and 1945. These are surviving important cultural properties. This means a construction manager on this site is constantly switching gears. One minute you're managing modern steel and titanium asset maintenance, and the very next minute you're pivoting to incredibly strict, highly documented historical preservation protocols for the building right next door.
Let's look at the operational reality on the ground in Section 4, Managing Life Cycle and Logistics.
As a construction professional, you have to look at these cultural features and translate them into practical project management terms. The famous Kaminari-mon Gate, it's not just a beautiful photo spot. Logistically, it's a massive visitor funnel creating intense tourism pressure. Nakamise Street is a severely constrained, narrow corridor demanding flawless delivery and emergency coordination. And the Hosamon Gate, with its giant lanterns and sweeping roof, you have to classify that as a significant inspection and falling object risk zone. When you have dense crowds gathering at the ceremonial outer gates, visitor load and active worship absolutely dictate your work phasing. You just cannot block off the main artery of a site that sees millions of visitors a year. That means temporary barriers, intense noise controls, and off-hour work are mandatory. Crane staging and material deliveries have to be meticulously coordinated, often in the dead of night, just to protect those pedestrian routes and respect the religious nature of the site.
All right, let's synthesize this in Section 5, the Global Manager's Checklist. If you're managing a project in a historic, dense urban district like Asakusa, your checklist goes way beyond standard building tech. You've got to verify cultural property status building by building. You must rigorously check local festival calendars and worship schedules because there is no way your concrete pour can interrupt a centuries-old ceremony. You have to map out highly constrained emergency access, set strict crane limits, establish noise controls, and guarantee that your modern materials ensure perfect visual compatibility. Managing the site means you need to understand local tourism economics and religious customs just as well as you understand engineering.
And this really brings us to the core philosophy of this whole case study. Global project managers must translate technical decisions into culturally acceptable solutions. The fact that the main hall is reinforced concrete and titanium doesn't make it fake. The post-war reconstruction holds profound cultural value precisely because the form, the rituals, and the community meaning have been so carefully preserved through modern asset management. Your job is to facilitate that meaning safely.
So, I'll leave you with a final thought to mull over. How do color, roof form, scale, and traditional elements like lanterns create such a powerful sense of visual continuity even when the structures themselves are complete modern reconstructions? It challenges us to remember that the beautiful illusion of antiquity isn't just ancient magic. It's sustained, every single day, by brilliant modern engineering and invisible, meticulously planned logistics. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Next time you step onto a historic site, take a closer look at what's really holding up history.